Welcome back, everyone, to Goodie and JohnnyMo with the movies. We are back again. This time, we actually get to do something for the first time, which is we are doing a current film that has just been released. We just saw it this weekend, and we're finally doing a review on it.
And we've both seen it?
We've both seen it. John's actually seen it twice now. It is Captain Marvel.
Yeah, well, before we get started, what are we drinking?
This is Great South Bay. This is Blonde Ambition. Great South Bay is a brewery here on Long Island in the town of Bayshore.
I'm drinking a very large glass full of Foster's, which is Australian for drinking good beer.
Cheers. Cheers to you guys.
Cheers to you guys.
Thank you guys for tuning in.
So before we get started, I just want to say, I think, I've been slowly but surely letting a lot of my family and friends kind of know about Goodie and JohnnyMo with the movies. Some people just found out this past weekend, which is good. I wanted to have it get a little steam. So I think a lot of the people I've told that have watched have enjoyed it. So I think we're starting to get a little bit of traction, at least within certain circles. That being said, I did want to give a shout out to a friend of mine, my buddy Nathan, who is turning 7 this month, I believe. Just wanted to give him a happy birthday and cheers, and hope everybody enjoys watching.
Nathan, you're famous.
Yeah.
Big Marvel movie this weekend.
Huge, I think.
Movie leading into Avengers Endgame. Captain...
Which I think is the next Marvel movie coming out.
That's coming out in April.
So the Spider-Man movie
takes place in July, right after that.
Okay.
So we got Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, a young Samuel L. Jackson, and taking place in Captain Marvel, which the time frame of this movie is in 1995. So definitely before pretty much all the events that have really taken place so far in the MCU.
I was trying to figure out when it was supposed to take place.
I kept hearing like mid-90s, and then finally when I read details on it, it said 1995.
Oh, okay, because they don't actually...
No, they don't give away the year.
Exactly. So I actually wound up seeing it. Me and Chris had gone to see it.
Yep, we saw it on
Thursday night,
preview night.
And this was one of the few Marvel movies that my wife actually wanted to see, probably because it was, woman
female superhero. Yeah,
I remember when the preview came on, and she was like, "Oh, I'd like to see that." And me, being a good husband, remembered that, even though she forgot it. I said, "I'm taking you to see Captain Marvel." So I actually went and saw it today with her, and she liked it. And it was actually very interesting because actually, even over the course of a couple of days, managed to see different previews in the movies. Interesting enough, one of the previews I saw was the new Spider-Man movie, which I'd actually seen that preview already. But for the first time, I saw the preview for the new X-Men movie, Dark Phoenix, which I'm actually really looking forward to. If they do it right, that's one of the greatest storylines in Marvel Comics history. And I would anticipate that might be the last X-Men
that's going to be the last Fox
that Fox
X-Men
has, and
film.
then I think X-Men comes back to Marvel Studios.
I think that's the plan. They haven't revealed how they're going to incorporate the X-Men into the MCU yet. So we still have to wait and see how that's going to happen.
Good.
But this is going to be Fox's last film, and then we're going to see how Kevin Feige brings these guys into the fold.
Yeah, I mean, me and Chris kind of talk a little bit about, once Thanos is done, who's going to be the
big bad?
The next big bad that hopefully is a continuing story arc through all the Marvel movies for anywhere from, I don't know, whether it be 6, 8, or 10 years. I think some of the biggest contenders probably would be either Galactus and I was just thinking about this the other day. I think it might be this guy Korvac, who is really big, kind of tough guy, but not as popular. But he was a character that actually became very cosmic at some point, where everybody joined forces to beat him.
I feel like it's going to end up being. I keep thinking it's going to be someone that's more cosmic. It's not going to be someone that's earthbound.
Yeah, I think so too. Captain Marvel. We definitely wanted to talk about how the movie starts from the very beginning. the opening credits.
Opening credits to Stan Lee.
Oh, so first let's just get this out of the way. If you haven't seen the movie,
there's going to be spoilers in this.
Stop watching, go
Yes.
see the movie, and then talk to us, because we're
That's a very good point.
Yeah, we're going to give away everything. There's nothing holding back. So if you don't want it ruined,
stop now.
Stop
and
now.
Come back and watch
So,
after
yeah,
you've seen the film.
we don't want anybody to dislike this video saying, hey, you said this, that, the other thing,
I
didn't warn us.
I'll also listen in the description too that there's going to be spoilers too.
Yes.
So what was really cool was the Marvel montage that they do in the very beginning of every film, which has been pretty much a collaboration of all different clips from the Marvel movies throughout the MCU. It finally just does one of all Stan Lee.
A huge Stan Lee homage montage.
Yeah. All of basically his film scenes throughout the 22 Marvel films, with a big thank you Stan after that finishes up.
Yeah, and that was kind of cool. That's the first time we've seen that.
Yeah.
I'm curious if they're going to also do that
for Avengers
Endgame.
You know what? That's a good question. If they're going to do that, or if they're going to sum up all of the MCU films, that they're going to switch it back. They might keep it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be kind of cool to, at the very least, do it for at least the next one, which is really, I think, the end of the first big chapter in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And again, I think such a great debt is owed to Stan Lee. Because of all the characters he's created. So many of the characters that have been brought to the screen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as well as in the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. So many of those characters were created by Stan Lee. Not all of them were created by Stan Lee, but most of them were.
Stan had appearances in those films too. A lot of the Fox films he made appearances in.
Yeah.
So that was that's worth noting, I think, also. But I mean, it's a shame that he passed away, that he didn't get to see these films now that are going to be coming out. But from what I remember hearing, like a couple of years ago, they had filmed a bunch of
cameos in advance. So I'm curious how many we have left.
It was almost like they were, sadly, they were planning for this at some point, and that they were going to at least have a way to honor Stan in some of these films going forward. Of course, Stan makes an appearance in this film. There's a very ironic, when we get to that point, there is an ironic, did you catch what he was reading?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll talk about that in a second. So a bunch of little Easter eggs and stuff like that throughout the film, because this takes place in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s, so for me, there was a really cool homage that's almost paid to the 90s throughout this entire film, and all these little the music. I mean, did you enjoy the music in the 90s?
I liked it a lot better than the 80s.
Okay,
for sure.
The music that they picked for this film, I thought went really well for the movie, because it was all 90s.
Yeah, no, I think it was pretty good. Might have been overused a little bit, but
I can
that's
understand
okay.
That. So we take place in space. So we start off. What's the Kree planet?
Hala.
Okay, so we start off there, where basically Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, is. Now, what was that thing that she went into? It was an AI, right?
The Supreme Intelligence.
Supreme Intelligence
is the AI basic leader of the Kree. They don't really explain too much about what that is in the movie, which I'm actually a little surprised about that. They should have put it into a little bit of context.
Well, maybe they're saving that for for a sequel film.
Oh, and I really do hope that there are sequels, because
I think there is.
One of the things I had to preface this movie with my wife is that even though she hasn't seen all of the Marvel Cinematic movies, universe movies, I had to tell her that this one actually takes place in the past. It takes place earlier than any of the other movies.
It almost feels like a standalone film.
Well, I mean, it is. It's a standalone origin film that is it doesn't take place in present day. Like, I wanted her to know that up front.
This has a feeling of the Phase 1 films. A lot of the Phase 1 obviously were all the origin stories, and we hadn't really had an origin story in a while.
Yeah.
So this this is a little bit of a throwback to that.
I think it was a good change of pace.
Yeah, I think so too.
They were experimentally. I think they were able to do some things that maybe they hadn't been able to do with any of the previous movies, because all of the previous movies took place in present day.
Right. And of course, you're continuing the story.
Yeah. So I mean, so the Supreme Intelligence in the comic books, sometimes he's known as the Supremer, but the Supreme Intelligence is they kind of allude to this in the movie as well. There's a scene in the movie where they say, you know, if anybody dies today, they'll become a part of the Supreme Intelligence, and you know that'll be a good day. I believe what happens is that it is an artificial construct of the downloaded minds of all the Kree, all past Kree. So it's something that over the course of, I think, probably thousands of years, it you know, the opinions and the dictates of the Supreme Intelligence are not constant, because over the course of time, the different minds that get pulled into it, it actually has had different outlooks, or
so it adapts.
It adapts, you know, and it's it's an accumulation, you know, and it all gets weighed in. So it is, you know, it's for all I know, there's all sort of like an internal voting process inside. Mm-hmm. It's just the giant mind meld that is constantly added to it. I don't think every single Kree person that dies gets added to it. Right. I think it's probably military commanders or soldiers, or even maybe even politicians, whatever, or great minds and scientists.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm actually very surprised that they didn't explain that at all in any capacity. Just the AI Supreme Intelligence. But I'm actually glad that they did that, as opposed to her talking to just someone in charge.
That could have even been like a deleted scene. That's something that they could have even filmed, but maybe just didn't fit for the role. It didn't fit in the film, so they cut it out. Yeah. So we won't find that out till a month or two down the line.
I kind of wish they had spent a little bit more time on Hala. Because one of the problems I had with the movie overall is I think there was a little bit of a lack of grandeur, because most of the film, I think, wound up taking place on Earth. Mm-hmm. And one of the taglines of the Captain Marvel comic is he's the most cosmic superhero of all. So I kind of expected a little bit more of a grand operatic scale, as opposed to the little bit more of a human touch. I was hoping they were going to go at it. It started out really good with everything on Hala, because giant intergalactic planet, very advanced civilization. But I felt like they kind of left that
too quick.
And you never got back to Hala.
No, because once you went to
Torfu, and then back to Earth.
Because basically, so they go to this other planet to go rescue one of their undercover agents, mm-hmm. right? And they go there, and then they find out that there's that there's Skrulls all over the place that are also that have taken form of the natural habitants of the mm-hmm. planet. So once that ends up happening, doesn't Bree gets captured, mm-hmm. right? So Captain Carol Danvers gets captured, and she's on the Skrull ship now, mm-hmm. and they're trying to pry information out of her, and she's pretty much unconscious. And they've got this. She's hooked up to some
sort of mind
probe that starts going through her memories, and all of a sudden you start to see her time on Earth a little bit, and then she finally wakes up and gets out of that deep sleep that she's in.
Yeah.
And then eventually, she just happens to, there's a big scuffle that occurs, and then she ends up on an escape pod, and it just so happens that the ship is rolling past Earth.
No, I you know what? I don't think that was incidental. I think they got the idea.
Oh, but they were trying to, you know what?
From her memories.
You're right, because they did figure out what planet, I think,
that she's from.
That she was from.
And apparently, I'll be honest with you, some of the way they did this story was a little hard to follow. It was like, things became uncovered as you went, but right. At the end of the movie, when you try and piece it all back together, it's a little choppy, it's a little spotty. It's a little hard to figure out what, if Carol Danvers didn't start finding out about her past, what was the Kree's intention of having her at all? You don't really figure out what anybody.
Well, because she was a living weapon.
Yeah, and you don't know whether they were just using her as a weapon, or they were were keeping her to also find out what the Kree were looking for, to find out her relationship and history on Earth with Project Pegasus and Annette Bening's character of I forget her name in the movie, and the inventions that she was making, the light drive, so that they don't just they kind of like put all these things out there, and the movie kind of just has like a natural flow to it that's more like just like a regular movie with all these different action sequences, but like the superstructure of the story is a little kind of hard to follow, and it's a little hard to make sense at the end either.
Well, they definitely didn't make clear when they were on the ship that they were going to Earth, which they called Planet C-19 or no C-53,
C-35 or
C-53,
C-53 to 530.
So, but they don't make it clear that that's where they're going. It just so happens when it's time for her to get into the escape pod and she's out there, all of a sudden they're above Earth.
Yeah.
And I don't know how far away when they took her, like what part of the universe that was, because then
they don't really say.
They don't really. So it just so happens that they just got there very quick. It just seemed like it was just real quick. Okay, here we are. We're at Earth. She gets shot out down into the blockbuster.
Yeah, and in terms of like where the scope of operations is, because so many of the Marvel movies really kind of take place either on Earth or maybe like in Asgard where everything's different. It's hard to really figure out if like the Kree homeworld is in our galaxy or in another galaxy.
Right.
Some of the dialogue that they originally used kind of speaks to that. Everything's happening in the same galaxy, but then at the end when she gives Nick Fury her homing device, and she goes, it's good for up to 4 galaxies away, and it's like, all right. Okay, so where is the Kree-Skrull War? Is it in this galaxy, or is it between 1 and 4 galaxies away? In all honesty, a galaxy is huge.
Well, I wasn't sure if that was actually like a joke, or was it actually she was serious?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you don't know, and that's the thing. And because you don't really know, you don't know whether she's serious or not.
No.
Just to talk about the Skrulls a little bit, because the Skrulls are kind of introduced kind of early in. Towards later in the movie, you kind of realize that they're more like a peaceful group, and they're being hunted down and trying to be eradicated by the Kree. Whereas in the comic books, the Skrulls are actually a huge military empire at war with the Kree, but it's like it's like 2 titans going against each other. It's not just a ragtag group of people that the Kree is hunting down. The Skrulls are considered bad guys in the comic books. They were they're also one of the oldest in the comics. I mean, their first appearance was in Fantastic Four #2. It's like they're like one of the they've been around. And they've always been portrayed in a negative light. They're I believe the only instance where there might be some positivity towards them is I believe when they talk about the origin of the Kree-Skrull war in the comics, which apparently has been going on for probably millennia. I believe it's about basically like the Skrulls were a benevolent race, and they tried to foster the Kree, and the Kree wound up building weapons and wound up killing a bunch of Skrulls. So they turned out to be like they took the gifts and turned it into war and wound up saying, hey, we could beat these guys.
Well, future films might turn into that. You might actually get to see the Skrull.
But that was so long ago, and now they're just 2 huge empires that are just constantly at battle with each other. And you'd be hard pressed to say whether any one of them is really, really good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
So oddly enough, the film is called Captain Marvel.
But you don't once hear you don't hear that as a name.
Yeah, it's something that I really...
She's never once
actually
called...
She is never called Captain Marvel. And it really is kind of interesting because technically... Okay, so in the comic books, the original Captain Marvel was a captain in the Kree army, or the Kree force, and it was Captain Marvel. And it was a male character, and his last name was Marvel, which is really what the Annette Bening's character is.
Yes.
She is Kree, and her name was Marvel. So they kind of like, and they don't really say whether she was a captain or not, but she probably in translating the comics to the movies, she's really like Captain Marvel,
yeah,
most likely. So it actually is kind of interesting. Whereas in the comic books, Carol Danvers is a human character who was introduced very early in the late 60s, right alongside of Captain Marvel. First appearance of Captain Marvel was Marvel Superheroes number 12. Second appearance of Captain Marvel was Marvel Superheroes number 13, and that's the first appearance of Carol Danvers. So she was associated with the Captain Marvel character for a number of years. I believe in like Captain Marvel number 18, somehow she wound up getting powers. But she was just like Carol Danvers with some powers.
Right.
And then in the late 70s, she became a full-blown like Kree soldier, Ms. Marvel, with a Captain Marvel type uniform.
Yeah.
So, it is, exactly, it was kind of interesting. Like, my wife would tell me, so who's Captain Marvel? And I'm like, okay, that's a good question. Because I don't even know if that really is Captain Marvel. Because they don't mention the name Captain Marvel, I don't think at all, even at the end of the first Avengers movie.
Not even in Infinity War. You see her symbol.
Yeah.
Her icon lights up. And
so it is actually kind of interesting. It's really, Carol Danvers as this powerful character. And it is kind of cool. One of the things I found interesting with almost a little hard to believe with Annette Bening's character is that she's basically a Kree infiltrated into human society,
right.
into the Earth's military.
Yeah.
So I found it interesting, when Carol Danvers says, oh, you have blue blood, and apparently at no point was there ever any sort of blood test on this person in the military. It's like, these are the types, you don't want to try and overanalyze a film too much, but
right.
I'll be honest with you, there are enough instances of this film where like things really don't make that much sense, but it made for a good story. It made for a good light story, and it kept the story going. But at the end of the day, like I really think they took a lot of liberties with certain logic.
No, I think so too. And again, there are certain things that they don't want us to overthink. They want us just to sit back and enjoy the story.
Right.
Like you said, when you do start to like dive into it a little bit and dissect it, there are things that are kind of like a little bit harder to take.
Right, and I think they could have avoided a lot of these, kind of silly things if they just put a little bit more thought and depth into the story, as opposed to just kind of like just putting out a story out there that's kind of fleshed through, and it goes from we need to get from point A to point B to point C to point D. What's the easiest way to get there? And we assume that people aren't that discriminating, and they'll buy it.
Right.
And if you just sit there and watch the movie, it's enjoyable and you buy it.
Yeah.
But if you sit there and if you think about it with even just a little, and I'm not talking about like super analytical, I mean just a little bit of critical, you sit there and say, okay, that really doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I think to me that's just bad storytelling. There's a way to do it. Storytelling, is not easy.
No, it's
not.
There's
anybody can just write nonsense and string it together, and that's pretty much the definition of a stupid movie.
Yeah.
That makes no sense.
Which comes out all the time, every year.
Right. So I think, with this one, I think, you're not dealing with just human characters in human settings where everything happens the way things normally happen. You're dealing with cosmic characters in a cosmic setting. I just found it odd, Carol Danvers is walking around the city and she's walking around like she lives in, like she's an Earthling that lives in New York. She is an Earthling, but she doesn't know that. She's been raised as Kree.
Basically,
she's there as a Kree warrior, on a mission. She's not walking around making jokes with people. So I found some, it makes for a fun movie, but it's like you sit there like, this is supposed to be a little bit more serious. What's going on?
She definitely was a little bit of a smart aleck, especially with Samuel L. Jackson. Like I found that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
She was constantly like almost like busting his chops, like to a degree.
Yeah, I almost found their back and forth banter a little too comfortable and familiar. Like they were almost like a team.
Right.
And it happened instantaneously.
Well, I found it. Here's one thing. She ends up using the internet, which I found to be very funny. Like she just walks into a coffee shop.
Right.
1990s coffee shop, which is basically dial-up internet. Okay, with AOL, and she's going on the internet and she's looking things up. Like, how do you know how to do this? Did she have a book that she was reading? Did she have like?
I think there was a manual there. So I mean, she was
Something
very technical. The whole thing with her, like rigging up the telephone to call the Kree spaceship.
Right.
You know, to me, like, you know, it makes sense and it doesn't. You know, like I can't figure out how you would be able to, like, do that.
Right.
You know?
Off of like a simple telephone.
Yeah, exactly.
Like without like a satellite, without like any.
You know, I mean, I'm sure she was like maybe running some stuff through her suit, maybe, but it's like it just seemed a little odd because the first time she did it, she had a lot of time and she was in a whole Radio Shack store where maybe she was able to pull components and, you know, combine them in ways that nobody ever thought. But so I think you could get away with that one.
Yeah.
But then she did it again
in the military base,
like just off a payphone or like, you know, a phone on the wall.
It's
like, you know, she just literally, like, it almost looked like she just picked up the phone, hooked up a couple wires, and she's dialing directly to that spaceship, not any other spaceship, not, you know, that spaceship. And I'm like, come on, you know. So what does that do story wise? Right. You know, it allows her to communicate with Yon-Ra, which they needed to do to progress the story.
Yes,
but it makes absolutely no sense.
It was a means to an end, but it doesn't.
You know, and you can only go to that well so many times.
Which I think they only did it what, twice? They only did it twice, right?
Yeah, they only did it twice. But like it's like little things like that. You know, you keep doing enough of those. To me, it detracts from the story because you sit there and say, okay, this is another thing that's unbelievable.
So Carol tracks down her old friend at the bar that I guess they used to hang out at when they were in the Air Force.
Well, yeah, right? I was trying to figure out how she even got that.
So you saw it again today. So can you tell me, because we talked about this the other night. So Carol shows up at this bar and she's looking at pictures and she asks, I guess it's like one of the owners of work.
Well, first there's like a mind. She gets the name of the bar. At first I was trying to figure out where she even got the name of the bar. The name of the bar was Pancho's Bar.
Right.
Like Pancho Villa. There must during her like her
flashbacks,
her mind lapse flashbacks. You know, I think the billboard showed up. You know, like the sign in front of the store.
So I think that's how she came up with that, which I can understand.
Right. So that's when she went on the internet,
and looked it up
and searched for ponchos, and that's what came up. And so she drives there.
She drove on a motorcycle.
On a motorcycle,
right?
She drives there.
But she just learns how to ride.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now she gets there.
She knows how to ride a motorcycle.
But this is the best part, though. She gets there.
She's literally there for 2 minutes.
Right. And Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury, walks in.
He doesn't even walk in.
He was there.
He was there.
He's behind the bar.
It makes almost like he came in from the back room.
I just don't know how he found her.
Time wise, you like you said, like you know, he got there. It's like he got there and walked in. The way he was there so fast, coming from the back, like
if he knew he was.
If he was right behind her, she would have known.
Right.
Like it wasn't like she was there for half an hour. She was really there for 1 minute.
There's no way he followed her.
And it almost made it feel like he was there before her, waiting for her.
Oh, absolutely.
And still, after a second viewing, that makes absolutely no sense. They don't even try to explain.
Oh no, it just keeps going.
But what did that accomplish?
Just progress the story.
Progress the story. You know, she's in this place to find some clues, and now she needs to get teamed up with Nick Fury as soon as possible. Just have him show up. Now, for no real reason, no apparent reason that makes any sense.
Well, we skipped over the meeting of the two of them. So when they first meet, Carol's doing her space cell phone. Talking to her crew, the Space Force. Mm-hmm. Nick Fury comes up to her, and then you also have Agent Coulson, which was cool that they brought him back. I'm actually disappointed. Coulson I thought he was going to have a bigger role in this film because S.H.I.E.L.D. is involved. He still, it's a minor cameo.
Yeah.
He's really not in it that much. He's got a couple of scenes, and that's really it.
I also can't figure out why S.H.I.E.L.D. even showed up.
Well, here's the funny thing. In the first Iron Man film, they don't even have the S.H.I.E.L.D. acronym yet. They're still calling it the Strategic Homeland.
Yeah.
Coulson spells out this whole thing, and then you have Pepper Potts going, well, that's a real mouthful. And he's like, yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah.
So that takes place in 2008. So you're telling me this is 13 years before in 1995.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're calling themselves S.H.I.E.L.D. then.
Right. And they're almost comical when they show up. It's like they've apparently they've never seen anything really exciting.
Like this.
Like how did they even get the call there's a security guy who says,
Right.
there's something going on. So he calls.
Well, he might have saw something fall from the sky and land in the Blockbuster.
Could have.
Because he's the patrol guy, so if he's just sitting there the entire time watching, and all of a sudden he just sees this thing fall into Blockbuster.
Okay.
And this girl comes out.
Right.
You're like, all right, that's a little weird.
So he calls the cops, and the cops
Right.
show up, and then these guys show up at the same time, and they really look like they look like two guys in Men in Black costumes. To be honest with you, they
almost in the Men in Black car.
Yeah.
I mean, it was gray, but it was almost like
they don't really look that serious.
It was almost like that Lincoln.
They don't believe anything she's saying, and it's
Right.
like they.
And it's only because the scroll shows up and shoots at them that all of a sudden they're like, what the hell
this is
that?
real.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
She starts
found
talking about like, oh yeah, I'm part of like the Space Force, blah blah blah, and they're like, oh
like,
really?
"Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
they're almost like very bumbling and comical, but they're supposed to accept that this is maybe the beginning of Shield. It's being, it just seemed very odd. They seemed like they almost seemed like a bunch of Keystone Cops at some point.
Right.
Just
But this is where she chases down the scroll and gets on the train.
Right, to me is just that whole thing is just an obligatory action sequence. They need to have certain action sequences throughout the film, and that was going to be it. This whole showdown on the train. And incidentally, so Samuel L. Jackson and Coulson,
the
driving,
they're
following that train, in a car, almost makes absolutely no sense. Because it's not like the French Connection, where literally there's a street underneath the train and he's just following the train in a straight line. These guys are like, they're on a highway. They're trying.
Almost like side roads.
Yeah,
it's like as long as they're staying like close to like where the train line is.
It's kind of hard. At the end of the day, that train is going. You're not going to catch up to that train unless you have a direct line with it, and you're going 50,
Right.
60, 70 miles an hour. So they're driving by and they see her on the train. How very convenient. They see her and oh, there she is. Let's figure out a way to follow that train. And it's just like...
Now this is where she sees Stan, right? She sees Stan on the train?
Yeah, so
Okay.
let's talk about
she
that.
she sees Stan on the train and almost like gives him a wink as he's reading a script.
And I was okay with that.
That was a nice little nod.
He's reading the script. She's reading the script. He's reading the script to
Mallrats, which makes a cameo.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with that
Okay.
movie, but that's Kevin Smith.
That's a Kevin
right?
Smith film, yeah. So he makes a cameo towards the end of that film.
I've seen
And
that movie once, but a long time ago, and only once.
He has a really nice dialogue that goes back and forth with with like the characters. So he's reciting that, and when he's reading it, I'm like, I know the words to that, and then I realize that it's Mallrats.
See, I didn't recognize the words at all, but you can see
Mallrats
on what he's holding.
Yeah,
so yeah, it was actually
screenplay.
kind of good. Just for another, you never know. I just don't know when. Like I said, when are we going to have? I'm pretty sure we're going to see one in Endgame.
I'm hoping we're going to see one in Endgame.
I am too.
At least I would hope to see one at least in Endgame and Spider-Man
maybe even
Far,
Spider-Man.
Yeah, Far From Home.
And
I would like to see that. If those were if those end up being the last two, okay, but that would be nice to see those, to see him at least wrap that up.
So now there's another line of dialogue in this movie that absolutely drives me insane, because and it seems very innocuous, but it seems like very innocent, but you sit there and you go, it makes absolutely no sense. So they say, they talk about how Dr. Lawson, Annette Bening's character is Lawson, how she disappeared 6 years ago.
Right.
And Brie Larson goes, wow, I've been
missing. I've been here for 6 years.
My memory only starts back six years ago. Yeah. Okay, so 6 years is an Earth time measure.
Right.
If she's not familiar with Earth, she has no idea what 6 Earth years is time-wise. To line that up with how long she's been on Hala makes absolutely no sense. A year only makes sense to the planet you're on.
Right.
That it's not a universal constant of time. So it actually. So I'm sitting there going, I'm saying to myself, and I didn't really catch it the first time, but the second time it really struck home. I'm like, how does she know what a year is? She's completely oblivious of the planet Earth. Like she's figuring out that this is probably where she comes from.
Right.
You know, but like
but she doesn't know that.
I don't think there's no reason why she should know what a year is.
Well, it just would have been better too if she would have talked on more like an intergalactic scale. Like they don't call it Earth, they call it C53.
Yeah.
So instead of saying a year being like 6 cycles, like something like that, because a cycle for them would be obviously an entire year that it takes to revolve around their sun. But instead of calling it a year, they could just say something like a cycle or revolutions, whatever they want to call it. But don't call it a year.
Right. There should have been something in there that she would have been able to like put in some sort of conversion factor and say, oh, that's how much time. We got that. No one's going to do that because that's too heady, and it's like.
Well, you're just sitting back and trying to again.
It serves the purpose.
You're going along with the story.
Like in any other Marvel Cinematic Universe, somebody says a year, they know what you're talking about. But in a cosmic setting, she wouldn't.
Right.
and I just thought that to be, just something that they just gloss over. Everybody just accepts that. It's like, no, that doesn't make any sense to me.
So eventually, then they find her friend, right? They find
Maria Rambeau.
Rambeau, right? So they find her, who is one of her co-pilots, or not one of her co-pilots, but like another fighter in the Air Force.
Now, Maria's daughter is Monica Rambeau.
Right, who she grows up to be.
In the comic books, Monica Rambeau is like the third iteration of Captain Marvel. If you count Captain Marvel is the first iteration. Ms. Marvel is the second. The third one is Monica Rambeau. And she was a black Captain Marvel in the comics.
She was I really liked
really powerful too.
I liked the two. I liked their relationship. So Carol Danvers and Monica's the daughter.
Monica's the daughter.
Monica's daughter. The two of them have a really nice relationship. Like you could just tell. Like as soon as Carol shows up, Monica and
Maria.
And Maria. So all of a sudden, Monica sees her first, and it was like Auntie Carol, and all of a sudden she like starts to like freeze. Like I actually do know these people, and like I thought that was a really nice like touch, and as you see like throughout the rest of the film, how close those two probably were.
Yeah, it is nice, but it this is another thing that I didn't like really cemented it after I watched the second one. It strains credibility a little bit because. You got to figure the daughter, Monica, she looks about 11 years old.
Right.
I mean, I don't even think she looks 12. She looks like 11. Or maybe 10 or 11. Say 10 or 11.
So again, if you're going with 6 years.
Yeah, if Carol Danvers has gone for 6 years, you're talking that this girl was 5 or 6 years old when Carol Danvers disappeared. So we're talking like almost half of her life, Carol Danvers has not been part of.
Right.
And the half that she was like from birth to like 5, 6 years old.
Right.
I don't know about you, but like nobody remembers much from like your first 4 years of age. So she like really kind of bonded with this girl for like probably like a year or two. That's all she would remember. And now 6 years has gone by. And as far as they're concerned, she's dead. Like, you're talking about a little kid at the time when she was.
But you also have to think too that the mother Maria might have kept Carol in her life just by talking about stories or showing her pictures. So that could have like kept the memory going and the memory alive.
Could be, but it would be like one of those things where like she would have like I think she would have vague recollections of her, as opposed to when they present her. Meeting it back with her at 11 years old, like she's like talking to her and reacting to her as if like the last time she saw her was a week ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like 6 years is a long time for an 11-year-old, and people forget. People move on with their lives. I had my parents had friends when I was a little kid, and if you lost touch with them by the time you were 6 or 7, like right now they're distant memories. They're like shadows of recollections, because you never saw them again.
Yeah.
And that's what it would be. So I found it too convenient that like like this 11-year-old was like, oh my God, I missed you, and
But
we've had so many memories together. Like,
but remember too, though, actually, oh God, I'm terrible with the name. Maria, she does set that up though, because she says to Carol that, like, I didn't have family, I didn't have friends, like, you were my family. So I think because maybe that's all Monica knew was Carol, it might have been harder for her to forget about her.
Might have been.
Because if, it's not like she had, like, 10 or 12 aunts and uncles that she's chatting with all the time.
Right.
Like, if it was only Carol was the only one there and she doesn't have any other family, then I think it would have been harder for her to forget. And that's why she cherished all those items that she did have of hers.
Well, I think the easy fix for that is they should have made her a little bit older. By making her like 11 years old, it brings it into question that, does this even make sense the way it's playing out? If she was 15, that would be so much more of a difference, because now you're talking about she left 10. When she was 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And now, you have so many memories that, would really sink into long-term memory. You would have so many experiences. I mean, this kid doesn't remember, her holding her as a baby. She was a baby, so I think they, if they really would have thought it out, they should have made her a little bit older, and I think at least 4 or 5 years older would have made more logical sense to you, to accept the scenario, to accept the relationship, or the reality of the setup. Because I'm sitting there going like, this girl saw her when she was 6. The last time she saw her, she was 6. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. 6 years. I'm like, wow.
But they don't say her age, so you don't know definitely how.
Yeah, and I was literally looking at trying to
like
figure out. I'm like, okay, how old is she?
So it's like, but like,
I'm going. My gut is going 11. She wasn't like she wasn't 15. She was way too young.
No. I would at the oldest she was 12 or 13. At the very oldest, I would say that. But I thought they had a nice dynamic. And
now, interestingly enough, so one of the things that they talk about is Project Pegasus, which that's pulled from the comic book storyline. It's a pretty Project Pegasus shows up in comic books a lot, like in the 70s. I never really figured it out too much, but I think it did deal with I think Cosmic Cube. It was related around the Cosmic Cube, so that kind of made sense now.
You see it when it comes in later.
Like the Tesseract. I'm actually kind of happy about that. This was all kind of related to the Tesseract. So basically, the Tesseract came into the possession of a Kree.
And I want to know like how that happened, because
we don't explain that.
In Captain America, in the first Avenger, he goes down with the Tesseract in the ship. Actually, the Tesseract, I think, falls through the ship at one point. Isn't it like it burns its way through or something like that? And it falls through that ship, and then it goes down somewhere into the water, and then Captain America goes down with that giant wing ship. Right? Because Red Skull gets transported across the galaxy.
Yeah.
And then the Tesseract, I think,
burns
through.
You know what? I never tried to bridge that connection of how the Tesseract wound up from the Captain America movies.
Because when they when I think at the end of Captain America, he gets basically thawed out, right?
Yeah.
So you see them resurrect the ship, and then they find him kind of frozen, and then they take him, and of course they thaw him out and revive him. But they don't say anything about the Tesseract at that point in time. And it wasn't until I think the next time you saw it, I think was in the Avengers film.
Yeah.
Right.
And S.H.I.E.L.D. has it.
And S.H.I.E.L.D. has it.
And this, so at the very least, this explains how S.H.I.E.L.D.
gets it, right? But like I don't recall how if Samuel L. Jackson says anything about how they came into possession of it.
No, I don't think they do. So like I said, so many of the Marvel movies I've only seen like once. So there's a lot of them I want to go back. Because there are a lot of connections in there that you forget about, and it's like, oh, that does line up with that.
But there were some cool things, like Larson helps to, I think, develop the Quinjet, right? So we see probably the prototype Quinjet.
Oh, okay.
In the airbase. So like when they get into that airbase and they sneak in, that's the ship that they escape in.
Yeah.
There's all these cool like prototypes and this giant hangar, and one of them happens to be the Quinjet, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm trying to think if there were any other Easter eggs in there.
I loved how they just like walked through like the whole filing thing, and they said, "Oh, they just went down, and then they made it right," and they were like, "Oh, here's Lawson's box," and they open up and like, "Look, we got the plans to the thing, we got all this crease."
But I think that was in alphabetical order. I think.
But it just seemed, it was like
if
really
if
fast.
you look at the filing on the sides, I'm almost positive they had letters so that I think designated like sections of the alphabet and like where you were going.
Okay.
And so I think obviously everything was under Lawson's name.
Right.
Is it Larson or Lawson?
I thought it was Lawson, but it could be Larson.
Okay.
I forget. Well, no, Brie Larson.
Well, Brie Larson's the actress.
Yeah,
Who is the
Lawson?
Lawson. Okay,
Pretty sure
Lawson.
that Natalie character is Lawson. If we're wrong, you guys will correct us.
put it in the comment section.
Now, one of the things I also, like I said, I don't know if this was like a code thing that it really was supposed to stand for something else, but they were talking about how Dr. Lawson was trying to make breakthroughs in like light speed technology,
Right.
which, from an Earth standpoint, is unbelievable.
Right, because that's
But
light years ahead of.
Right, but if you're a Kree or Skrull, you already have that technology. You know, if
Kree had the technology, not Skrulls. That was the whole point. That's the whole point of what Mendelsohn was saying. Ben Mendelsohn, who plays Telos, Talos or Telos? Talos. So when he's the head Skrull in this film, he starts talking about how that was the whole reason for trying to get this technology.
Yeah, but if
they could escape the Kree.
But if the Skrull is an intergalactic race, okay, so Talos is ship.
But they were all refugees.
From
Everybody that was on that ship, they were all refugees.
Yeah, but
they were all leaving their planet, so they didn't have access.
The ship that Talos is on, so like the ship that Talos is on, obviously has warp speed capabilities.
Yes.
I mean, unless that's not a Skrull ship.
Well, I think they were also trying to, but that wasn't going to take care of their entire race. I think they're looking to develop the technology to get their entire race away from the Kree.
Yeah, I mean,
that's how I understand. That's how I was.
I understood it in the sense that they needed a ship that needed light warp capability, and I'm like, you're already flying around in one.
Well, I think they were trying to develop. I think they were trying to develop it themselves so that they could build their own and.
It just seemed a little like they didn't like I said. This is another thing that they really didn't explain well.
Right.
These intergalactic races that are flying around all the galaxy, they obviously have light speed capability. So what's the importance of her experiment? To me it was like, again, I just don't know that it was thought out well enough or explained well enough to the point that it made sense. Like it made absolutely perfect sense. So it's like I was like I felt like they needed to explain that more. Now if this is, unless it was just all code for we need to find the Tesseract because that's a really powerful thing.
Right.
And that's what I think what it comes down to was what was Jan Rog's motivation for everything that he's done with Brie Larson for the past 6 years? Was it to find the Tesseract?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think that's what they figured, that they knew it was the Tesseract that was powering everything.
They kind of had like a power damper on her to kind of keep her power in check.
And you see that in the very beginning.
They're breeding her to be a Kree warrior.
That's one of the oldest scenes. That's one of the first scenes in the film is that she wakes up out of bed and she's got this like circular dot behind her ear.
Yeah.
And as we're at the beginning of the film, you're not really sure like what the heck that thing is. Mm-hmm. It's until it's finally revealed that it was more of a power dampener for her, which I don't even know how they would develop something like that. I mean, I know the Kree's pretty advanced, but I mean, it seems that she's really powerful.
Yeah, because
once that's removed, because
the source of her power is
is the part of the Tesseract,
and that's not a Kree artifact. That's this that the power that she's got is very cosmic.
Yeah.
One would even say how was her body even able to absorb that blast and maintain it and harness it? If she's just a regular, so for example, in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Star-Lord was able to,
hold the Power Stone?
One of the Power Stones and not be destroyed because of his lineage. He is a child of Ego. So he wasn't he's half human. Brie Larson is just human. It really would make sense that she just would have been completely obliterated in that explosion. Why and how the energy would have embraced her, it's just, you know, it's one of those leap of faith types things. You just take it at face value.
You just take,
you know,
that's what makes her special.
that's what happened.
It makes her special because she's,
you know, I mean, you could probably argue the same thing. You know, why wouldn't the gamma bomb, you know, just, you know,
obliterate
Bruce Banner instead, you know, turned him into the Hulk. You know, so I mean, it's okay with that, but just so at some point, like so many parts of this movie is just, you know, you just take it for granted. That's what happened. Just accept it and go on. You know, it's like, okay, you know, but at some point, you know, something's got to make a little bit of sense. You know, I mean, but overall, I mean, the movie was fun. It was just like, you know, it was just like, I felt like, you know, to me, I just felt like it was, I think it was a standard superhero movie. Origin film that, in my opinion, I think should have been a little bit more serious, a little bit more cosmic in scale because of the characters you're dealing with.
Well, it's also just the stakes that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I mean, listen, there's 22 Marvel films. The majority of those films usually play into a lot of humor. There's really, I think, only a couple of films that take itself seriously. One of them being Avengers Infinity War. I would say Black Panther.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what other ones really took itself seriously. There's really only a couple, but this one doesn't.
Doesn't what?
This film doesn't really take itself too seriously.
No, it doesn't.
There's
you know,
a lot of
I think
around.
it tries to, you know, cover all the bases between action and humor.
I think it was well balanced in that respect. And listen, as far as the storytelling goes, okay, listen, if you're not going to dive that into it, you can sit back and you can enjoy this film.
Yeah. Right.
Like the average moviegoer is going to go to this film and they're going to enjoy it because of the reasons you were saying. Mm-hmm. It's a story that literally just keeps moving along, mm-hmm. and a lot of the stuff is more for convenience than anything else, just to keep the story pushing forward. And I think in that aspect, I think Marvel definitely succeeded in that they made an enjoyable film. You want to dive into it a little bit more and get into some of the details. Yeah, you can definitely pick the thing apart, which you could do with a lot of different Marvel films.
I mean, I think it really followed the superhero movie formula.
Marvel's formula.
Yeah, and I felt that, you know, I felt like going into this movie, especially with like the preview, I was expecting to get something a little bigger. I was expecting a more cosmic story, like a really like standalone kind of, you know, just a bigger story, a bigger production, a bigger story, you know, and I felt like I felt like I didn't get that. I just got like, you know, a standard, you know, Marvel movie where the characters just happened to be a little bit more cosmic than the others.
Well, just towards
but they were doing and saying a lot of the same things. They were like, you know, just checking off all the boxes in terms of, you know, action sequences and humor and feel good and you know, banter.
Definitely a feel good movie. It has the typical Marvel jokes that you're going to expect.
I don't think it took any chances. I mean, well, except for the fact that, again, you know, okay, so female lead character, first female led solo female leading Marvel movie. Yeah.
We probably could have led with that. I mean that. Yeah. And I think I think it's very important. Last year they had Black Panther, first African American solo film, led film, which was very successful. It was a good movie. And now Captain Marvel. Again, Marvel's taking their chance with this.
Right. Well, you had Ant-Man and the Wasp, so it was like the Wasp was like kind of co-headlining. You know, and this is really taking off riding off the coattails, I think, of Wonder Woman.
Yes.
You know, like, you know, and to me, I actually think Wonder Woman was a much better film.
I think Marvel saw what Wonder Woman did, and they said, okay, Warner Brothers took their chance. We have characters that can do that too, and well, they should. They should be putting those characters up front and center. Like right now, Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow's getting a solo film,
which is great.
That's like I'm looking forward to that because I like Black Widow.
I mean, a lot of the Marvel female characters are like members of another team. You know, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Avengers. You know, they're all, you know, there's a lot of either, you know, team members that are female or, you know, supporting roles that are, you know, that are female. You know, Marvel Comics, you know, has had not too many women have gotten their own comic books in the Marvel Universe. I mean, the biggest names would probably be, I think in recent days, female Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. But that would translate back to Ms. Marvel back in the late 70s. But characters like She-Hulk, which is nowhere to be seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
No, not yet.
Spider-Woman, nowhere to be seen. Dazzler, I I think there's hints of that, but I haven't seen that character anywhere. Black Widow kind of had her own title. It wasn't called Black Widow, but she had her own title for a while. But she's in the Avengers. And then you had lesser characters like Shanna the She-Devil. And then the cat Tigra or Tigra. Who I just found out this weekend that from the creator that it's pronounced Tigra. I was like, I've been calling her Tigra for 40 years. Not for nothing, I think Tigra sounds better. Sorry, Tony Isabella. I think there's been a little bit of I think there's been a little bit of wasted opportunity.
Oh, absolutely.
With Marvel in terms of female characters. So now to finally do this version, which I think was good. Now, so oddly enough, I believe this movie had two directors.
Yes, there was two.
There was
two
a
directors.
woman and a male director.
Yes. Yep.
So I find and Wonder Woman was directed by a woman.
Yeah, by Jenkins.
And I find it interesting because I'm like, does somebody think it's a necessity to have a woman director to bring that female,
I think to get into the female psyche better.
Psyche to a female character. I'm like, I don't know that it's necessary. I don't think it's a cheat. If you go back to, I think most of the female woman-driven movies of the last, say 70, 80 years, a lot of those movies, if not most of them, were directed by men. Not to say that women can't do it, but many women movies and highly acclaimed women movies have been directed by men because men just direct a lot more films than women do. If you look at all of the Academy Award winning performances by women over the decades, most of those films were movies directed by men.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there's anything right or wrong with that. It's just statistics.
I just think it was the pitch that maybe Patty had. When we're talking about Wonder Woman, I think it was just the pitch that Patty had to Warner Brothers and the fact that they liked it. Because guess what? Before that, they had who was the director for Avengers?
No clue.
Yeah, come on.
Snyder?
No, it wasn't Snyder. Are you kidding me? For Avengers? It was oh my gosh, he had it first.
I lose track of all of the directors' names because
I'm going to circle back to that one because
you got to keep in mind. To me, directors, kind of have their artistic stamp on a film, and if a movie doesn't really have an artistic stamp to it, the director's name doesn't stand out that much.
Joss Whedon.
Joss
Whedon.
To me, not many of the Marvel Cinematic movies kind of have a flair from the director's artistry.
So Joss Whedon had a shot a few years back he had the first shot at directing Wonder Woman and pitching a story.
Okay.
Warner Brothers didn't like it, so they said no, we're not going to do it, and that's one of the reasons why that whole idea left, and so he basically did his whole thing with Marvel.
Okay.
But here comes Patty along, and I think whatever story she sold them, which is one I think we got on film for the most part, she nailed it. They were like, all right, this is what we want to go with. I thought she did a great job. I think a lot of the reasons why they went and got female directors to get into the female psyche, I think a little bit better, especially for a character like Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I think it would have been a slightly different movie if they had gotten a male director.
Yeah.
I think it would have. I think the same thing for they would have been slightly different movies, but I still think they both would have been good. I don't think it's one of those things where it's oh no, it's got to be if it's a woman character, it's got to be a woman director. And that traditionally, that argument has never held up.
No, I don't think
in any movie making context.
I don't think it was that. I think they were just looking. I think they had a priority to have a female director in there. I don't think it had to.
I think maybe it was a good selling point.
And I think I think it was a good selling point, and I think it didn't work out for the best.
I think a lot of it has to do with maybe marketing strategy, which is something I constantly bring up. I think it had a lot to do with marketing strategy, and that's okay. Just as but women directors don't just make films that are strong with women characters.
No.
There are women directors. The one woman who has won the Oscar for Best Director is Catherine Bigelow for The Hurt Locker.
Yeah.
Which is not a
that's not a female-driven film. No.
And that's it's just one of those things that I think for whatever reason there were more male directors than women for whatever reason. But if there are women directors out there, they can make any sort of movie that they want.
Yeah.
And just like male directors, they can make any sort of movie that they want. So many famous actresses like Katharine Hepburn, Greta Garbo, Audrey Hepburn, even going into Julia Roberts. So many of these people's most famous movies were all where they were the star, and it was like a female vehicle. These were movies directed by men. So I mean, anybody could do these movies. So I don't think anybody should sit there and say if a guy would have directed, it would have ruined it.
No, I think it would have been a different film.
If a woman would have directed, Iron Man, it would have ruined it. I think it would have been a little different.
It just would have been.
Would have been a little different, and that's okay. So what I mean, and I'm all for diversity, because I think a woman directing the film, like I said, like it might be a different, slightly different slant on it.
I think that's what it was. I think these studios nowadays, like you said, if they are taking chances with directors, whether it's male or female, they want to see what's the director's vision for the character.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't mesh with what they're trying to do overall, I don't think they're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, for this film, I expected more from the director, regardless of who directed it. Like I was expecting, like I said, I was expecting this movie to be a little bit more grander in scale and a little bit more cosmic. Not like, didn't necessarily need to be like an opera, grand operatic scale. Just it was, the scope of the film was more than just car chases and fights on trains.
This is the one that's leading into Endgame.
Yeah, exactly.
You're leading into the culmination of 11 years. So I think in that aspect, I can understand where you were coming from, wanting to see some of that.
I mean, if like right now, like the way the Avengers ends is basically, everybody's kind of screwed. And Thanos wins. He gets the gauntlet. He wins today, and he does exactly what he wanted to do. And everybody's kind of at the whim, and who gets to say something at the very end? Nick Fury does. Nick Fury gets to hit that SOS button to say, Captain Marvel, we need you to save the day. Well, and luckily, I guess Captain Marvel was not one of the people that lost on the coin flip. Because can you imagine, it was a 50-50 chance that, she was not immune. She was, luckily she was on the side of life when the snap happened. But like, you sit there and, you give that buildup like, okay, everybody has failed. But Captain Marvel wasn't there yet. And Sam Jackson's got that ace in his hole. And he's called Captain Marvel. And Captain Marvel, like I said, in the comic books, Captain Marvel was, his tagline was the most cosmic superhero of all. And he was one of the main nemesis of Thanos. And he was actually, a really pretty strong character. He had cosmic awareness, so he was like, he was pretty out there. So like, I'm sitting there going like, wow, this is going to be, we're going to get one of the big guns in. And then I knew that the Captain Marvel character was going to be a woman. I was like, I'm okay with that, because I was like, it's part of the comics. I'm like, they were going to go with this version of her. Carol. They were going to go with the Carol Danvers character.
Well, it was nice.
Cool.
It was nice when finally, like, Carol, she goes back into towards the end of the film. She goes back into the AI, back to the Supreme Intelligence, and she overpowers the Supreme Intelligence while she's in there.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think that is my favorite part of the whole movie. Not that it makes sense that she was able to beat this, but in terms of the montage that they did, where Annette Bening, who is actually a little kind of hammy,
yes,
as the Supreme Intelligence,
yeah.
I think
she was better as the Air Force. Her
leader,
like whoever she was in the military.
Yeah. So that when they start going through, Annette Bening is telling Brie Larson, without us you're weak.
Right.
Without us, you're only human.
Yes.
And it goes through the montage, and when she's saying you're weak, it's going through all the montages of all the times that Brie Larson has fallen in her life, and accents, and then Brie Larson sits there and says, she goes, you're right, I am only human, and it focuses on the next part of all of those sequence of events. It's the montage of her getting up.
Yeah.
And
that was
one
of my favorite parts.
I thought that was like an emotional high point of the film. Now, how that gave her the power
inner strength
to I don't, it's like, if it was a matter of like she needed that conviction
yes
to go forward, then I guess that makes sense. But it shouldn't have upped her power level. It shouldn't have unleashed her power level, unless the only barriers to her power were her mind.
mental. And I think that's exactly what it was.
And maybe that's what it was.
I think because I think she was brainwashed for those 6 years as to thinking that she was weak, and the creek basically kept her down. So when she finally starts to realize that and she fights back, the inhibitor finally breaks off, and then we finally get Captain Marvel in all her glory. Yeah. Which I thought was great. Yeah. A great showcase of her abilities and her powers. And she couldn't control it at first. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought that was really cool too, how like, all of a sudden you get all this power and she's not a pro at it. Like, she definitely starts to fight members of her own Star Force. And as she's going through taking each one of these guys out, like it's almost a new awareness of the level of her abilities, and she tries to get that under control. Yeah. I thought that was great. And then we finally see her go up. So Ronan is in this film.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about him. So Ronan the Accuser, who I actually really like.
Comes in from Guardians of the Galaxy a few years earlier now. And he comes in. And I don't know what purpose he really had.
Well, okay,
in
so
film.
the Accuser.
I know who he is.
Ronan the Accuser is just one of the accusers. Like that's like a group. That's their job is, I think, they're in charge of these ships that just go in and take people out.
Right, and all of a sudden, and these missiles start to come down. It's what was like, it was going to almost like eradicate the area when they shoot it down. And all of a sudden, Captain Marvel, finally in her glory, she goes up and starts taking all the missiles out, and then starts. This is the scene in the trailer that you start to see when she's got the full mask on, and she's destroying all the ships and the missiles around her. She's flying through ships. And then Ronan just basically says, "We're gonna come back. We're gonna leave." And he's like, "What?" And he's like, we're gonna come back and get the weapon." He's like, "No, the girl."
The girl.
So I got a feeling we're gonna see those. We might see those two tangle up a little.
I'm hoping that there's a second Captain Marvel movie
that's still in the past.
Yes. Yeah. That
takes place after this.
Yeah. And not go with not necessarily pick up right after, but kind of starts off like after she's helped the Skrulls do their thing.
I want to see her adventure. I want to see how that
happens. And then like stuff that goes on. And again, like I expect that type of story to be something cosmic and grand in scale, because it's going to be about how she deals with the Kree.
Well, if that's the case, it's not going to take place on Earth. It's going to take place in space or somewhere else.
Right, it should take place in space.
So I think you're going to get your wish on that one. Yeah. Kevin Feige, there was a lot of discussion. Could we possibly see the Secret Wars in the MCU?
Because I've never heard of that.
Yeah, so that was someone talked to him about that. So I think that might be interesting as well. Now that we've introduced the Skrulls, could we actually see something like that happen on Earth, or could we have already started to see that happen with the Skrulls that were possibly even there?
One thing I found a little odd with the Kree is that the Kree wound up being such jerks.
Oh yeah, big time.
And it's like, not for nothing. Like, if, like the camaraderie and the interplay that you see in the beginning between Jan Rog and the Jude Law character and Brie Larson, like, it seemed genuine. Like, right. Teacher and student, and and it's like, and the group that she was with, like these guys, I don't know if they all go on like missions together, but it's like, they don't all hate each other. Like they're not allowed to cut each other's throats. I mean, these are members of the Kree military force, and right. if they're like a military, race, that's, they're going to have strong military feelings and tactics, and it's not all about, it's not going to be like rogue warriors and everybody on their own. It's going to be like Semper Fi, and we're all in it together. Leave no man behind. Any strong military race, that thrives on like military is, can only, I think, exceed with that sort of mentality with that mindset. Sound military tactics. Yeah. So these guys turning out to be like such jerks. It's just like, it almost feels like, wait a minute, that's not how they presented them in the first like half hour of the film. Like, you know, these guys were like, you know, comrades and all that.
But I think they were doing it only because to trick
like
her.
snowball Brie
Yeah.
Larson.
Yeah, I think that was pretty much the whole mindset. Because who was the sniper in the Star Force? What was her name? Minerva?
Minerva.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Right. So she was like, you know, like did you? She said basically, I hated you the whole time.
Yeah,
like,
she goes, I just don't like you.
Yeah,
I didn't
don't
like you. Period.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like-
yeah.
Well,
So
I mean, that could just be a symptom of like, you know, all women.
The two girls.
All
couldn't
women
work-
don't
they
like
couldn't work
other
together.
women, no matter what
They
civilization.
couldn't work. They couldn't work together well.
Yeah.
But I mean, but then of course, you know, at the end of the film, Brie Larson gives Samuel Jackson gives him the communicator, so he's got the pager, and then she's like, yeah, you know, I rigged it so it'll reach up to within 4 galaxies, which was pretty funny.
The final battle, not the final battle, but like the last time like Brie Larson and Jan Rog, you know, run into each other, like, you know, it's after his ship crashes,
Oh yeah.
you know, and like he knows he's outgunned, so he's like, come on, you know, beat me hand to hand. You know, and she just doesn't fall for it and just, you know, blast him. And I was almost kind of like I feel like he meant that to a certain degree. Like he was like, you know what? If you're gonna beat me,
Earn it. Yeah.
You know, earn it. You know, I don't think he was like sitting there going like, you know, maybe part of it was survival. Like, I'm gonna lose this if she just, you know, if it's just gonna be a battle of my technology versus her powers. You know, but but she just like, you know, blasted him into the wall.
I have a
and
feeling.
I was like.
But you know what? I got a feeling because Jude Law is not a main villain in this. You know, he just happens to fight her towards the end of the film.
And Jan Rog is in the comic book. Jan Rog is like the nemesis of Captain Marvel in like the early Captain Marvel.
Right.
So he's taking.
So he's gonna, I think, end up being her enemy, the villain in the second film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where maybe she does fight him more hand to hand and takes him up on that offer. I would like to see that because I almost wanted to see the two of them fight.
Yeah, no,
right there.
that was my point.
Yeah, like, I wanted to see that.
I wanted to see like, you know, her get that conviction and confidence and finally beat him in battle, especially since he's already a little banged up.
And he took her in the beginning of the film. He took her down.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, you know, that kind of would have been kind of cool. And it's not a matter of, you know, like, you know, I don't need to prove anything to you. This is a matter of like, you know, I'm gonna kick your ass, and if he happens to win, she's not gonna sit there and let him kill her. You know, he's gonna say, all right, you know, you're still a better hand-to-hand combat to me, but you know, I got this power, and you know, I'm still taking you down, right? You know, but
because she sends him back to Hala, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Okay, so I think we're gonna see him in the next film.
One thing I did found a little bit hard to believe in this film. Another thing I found a little bit hard to believe is when the jet or spacecraft, whatever that Brie Larson and Annette Bening were flying the first time, like that crash was really bad. Like that thing, like, you know, like they were going down and it hits and it's like going across the water and it hits like a big rock and like flips over it and blows up and the cockpit just goes flying forward and like they just like step out of that. And I'm like, okay, that crash was a lot worse than what they showed. I'm like they went out of their way to make it hit this rock. I mean, it didn't have to hit that rock. You know, I mean, you look at this thing, it's going full speed, hits this rock, and then boom, and all mayhem breaks loose. And it's like, oh, well, they just walked out of that. Okay. I thought that was
the ship is well. The ship's well protected inside. You know, the one thing I actually found ludicrous, and I think you and I talked about this, that giant, okay, when all those ships start to show up at the very end of the film, okay, we have satellites in the 90s that are up in space.
Oh, yeah, apparently.
So none of them picked up these ships.
Well, unless they were being cloaked, but
they weren't cloaked.
I don't think so.
The only thing that was cloaked was Lawson's laboratory.
Yes.
That was the only thing that was cloaked up in space. When the Ronin shows up with all of his ships, they were all visible. Not to mention, you have this person flying up into space, lighting everything up on fire as she blasts it. Like,
yeah.
How is this not seen or picked up on the satellite?
Yeah. I hear you.
I mean, I understand it's 1995, but there were still satellites up in space.
Yeah, I mean, if this was in the 70s, it would be different.
Right. If it took place back then, I'd give it a little more leeway because not as much satellites and technology is not there.
Maybe even the 80s.
But like, come on, like, no, that never gets picked up or discussed or anything. So I thought that was a little bit much. We haven't talked about the cat. We haven't talked about Goose. And Goose was supposedly a scene stealer.
Yeah, no, Goose, and in the credits, just so you know, Goose was actually played by 4 different cats.
I heard that. Yes. Yeah, I heard it was by multiple cats.
Yeah, and I thought Goose was actually pretty good because going for most of the film, I even think I felt this way too, and I was especially like listening to reactions of the people when I was watching it today. You know, the scenes with the cat, people were laughing. You know, I think most people think it really is just a cat, and for some reason they're scared of cats. And it's like they don't realize that it actually is whatever the hell
some like alien race,
some alien monster, because that was Annette Bening's pet.
Yes.
Like she, you know, it
so
was.
She did that for a reason.
Yeah, it was hers.
Yeah.
It was probably, you know, for all it was probably maybe even like a bodyguard.
So I thought that was it could have been. Yeah, I thought that was it because you saw it, 'cause as soon as Carol Danvers meets up with the cat again, Goose goes right up to her.
Yeah.
So it's obviously the cat knows.
Well,
her,
I mean, the cat.
her.
I think the cat is smart enough because the cat is constantly showing up where it needs to be.
Yes.
You know, it's not just roaming around and getting. You know, it's like, okay, I need to go where they are. You know, it sneaks onto the ship with them. It's following them around.
That was good. I like that.
You know, but a lot of people will, you know, really gets a lot of funny moments. You know, when people, you know, people are laughing and like, you know, they don't know that it really is this crazy monster. You know, when they show like, you know, they do the scan of it, and it's like, you know, I forget what they call it, a flurker, or some
fluker,
something like that.
Yeah.
Something with an F and a U. And they do a scan, and it's like highly dangerous.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What are you talking about? It's a cat."
But that was that was done in like a second, right? And then all of a sudden they scan Nick Fury like human, no threat at all. And then Nick Fury is like, what?
So wait, now is this how Nick Fury lost the use of his eye?
I mean, in the after credit scene, like that's. Well, no, the after credit scene, Goose just spits up the Tesseract.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So at the end of the film,
like, you know, he's got the patch
eye patch on.
You know, like, did he lose his eye because of the scratch, the cat scratch, which is actually?
But the eye's not gone because remember in Winter Soldier, he lifts up the eye patch to have his eye scanned at the end of the film.
Okay, no, that I don't remember.
And it's in the Triangular. What was that building called? The Triangular. Well, I forget what that building called. That Shield operated out of.
Oh, I don't remember.
The Triangular.
That.
Something like that.
No,
okay, so when he lifts up his eye patch, it's his eyeball's still in there, but it is definitely like discolored and everything. So I mean, I guess because he got scratched, but why would the cat scratch him?
I guess he was just, you know, being annoying.
I didn't get that part. Like I didn't get that either. But I guess that's the story of how Nick Fury lost his eye.
Now, one of the parts of the movie that I thought was a little bit of odd choice is, you know, basically the accent and the tonal quality of Talos' character, that Skrull character. Like, I thought like it made for like his odd conversing style. You know, it was different, but it was like, I don't know, to me it was like a little unexpected. You know, I don't know, I just found that like, I didn't find that it necessarily like worked that good.
I liked Bill Medicine. I thought he was good as Talos. It was interesting how he would change his accent from when he was Talos to when he was the director.
Okay.
When he was like Nick Shield, when he was
what other
Nick
stuff
Fury's.
has he been in?
Medicine, that's the guy from Rogue One. He was the villain in Rogue One.
Oh, when the as a human. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Okay, so like the Nick Fury's boss.
Yes.
That's what he really
looks like. That's what he really looks like.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually him. So
okay,
that's
interesting.
He was in Ready Player One. So he's been in a few things. I like him a lot. I think he's a good actor. He's got this stick right now for some reason where he makes a really good villain because every movie he's in, he plays a villain.
Yeah. Well, some people, you know, they become typecast as villains.
Yeah. So I mean, but he is a good villain. I like him a lot. I thought Samuel L. Jackson was great in this movie. I thought the banter between him and Brie Larson, I thought worked.
So I mean,
really well.
Samuel was like CG.
De-aged.
Yep. You know, Fountain of Youth type thing.
De-aged. So they did the same thing with Phil Coulson's character. They de-aged him too.
Yeah.
So I liked that. I thought they did a really good job. And this is the most that they used that de-aging technology. Because you got to remember, when they did de-aging, they did it with Michelle Pfeiffer in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Mm-hmm.
They did it with Michael Douglas in the first Ant-Man
I
film.
feel like there's like a conspiracy theory that like all of Tom Cruise movies have some sort of de-aging because he never ages. He never ages.
He's taken something well because he doesn't seem to age at all. And they did it with Robert Downey in Civil War when Robert Downey had that flashback scene in the beginning
Yeah,
of the
see,
film.
and, you know, and I think it's interesting. Like if you use it for a flashback, like that makes sense, and that's kind of cool.
Because it's literally over. It's a couple of seconds, but they had to use it the whole film
to use it for the
Samuel
whole
Jackson.
movie.
But I got to say, but it worked. It didn't take away from anything. Like, I'm not staring at Samuel L. Jackson like, where are they hiding his wrinkles?
Yeah.
You know, like he looked younger. I thought they actually did a really good job with that. I thought that was actually impressive using that technology. But
I'm afraid that it's, you know, you could argue that it's almost like a little bit of a cheat or an abuse of technology, you know, because, you know, if something like that is overused, you know, there's a certain creative line for that type of technology,
right.
And just like anything, it could be used for the wrong reasons, you know. So now, you know, and if it's used too much, what's going to happen is that you might have this paradigm shift where all of a sudden, like, you know, people aren't allowed to look old in movies. You know, there's no expectation of that. You know, everybody kind of looks younger. Everybody's so focused on looks. You know, and it's like, you know, I could see like, you know, elder members of the acting, you know, being like, you know, offended by that. Not necessarily offended because of what was done in this movie, but again, if something like that gets overused and for the wrong reasons, I think older actors and actresses are going to find that insulting and say, look, I'm 75 years old and I'm playing a character who's 75 years old, so I plan on, you know, I'm going to look 75 years old.
Yeah.
You know, if you go to a lot of older films, there are a lot of like character actors and stuff that are you know 60 plus years of age. You know, like, you know, old characters, and because people like that exist, and you know, people like, you know, whether they play grandparents or you know, like, you know, older you know, owners of like, you know, long-time businesses, you know, like the you know, matriarchs and patriarchs, you know, the great aunt, you know, there's all these character actors and actresses and all these parts in these movies that, you know, there's kids and there's teenagers and there's adults and then there's like older and then there's a lot older, you know, and you know, because that's life.
I think one, it's an expensive technology to use. That's an expensive visual effect.
Sure.
So I don't think it's going to become commonplace. Two, I think they obviously used in this film because they're not going to recast Samuel L. Jackson. They're not going to cast someone who's younger who kind of fits his bill. They're going to, you know, say, okay, this is Nick Fury in 1995. Yeah. So to them, it made sense. It was the
only thing for them to do, really.
Yeah,
exactly. Because having somebody not Samuel Jackson trying to act like Sam Jackson's character, I think really would just come off as hokey and not be convincing at all. So I like I said, I understand that. It's just, you know, people introduce things and I think they're just kind of like one of the things I usually use as an example is, you know, when Spielberg, you know, did his marketing thing with Reese's Pieces in E.T. Like it made sense to do it that once, and all of a sudden people said, oh my God, you know, and now it's product placement is so rampant. It's like, you know, it's a completely different thing.
Well, the difference is,
so someone's using this now to make sense. You know, 10 years from now, it might be like a technology that, like, you know, maybe misused. I think if it's overused.
I mean, it could.
It
could be abused, but I don't. As of right now, I don't know if that will actually happen. Because you can use makeup to make someone look older. It's very hard to make someone look younger, especially if you're talking about taking off 20 years on someone.
Yeah, that's true too.
But I mean, I think overall, I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed the performances. I thought Brie was great. I thought she did a really good job as Captain Marvel.
I like her. I like her.
I'm really looking. I mean, the second credit scene is, of course, the beeper goes off. It's current day with the Avengers. They're talking about all the people that have been wiped out, and you see Chris Evans and you see Scarlett Johansson, you know, looking at the beeper, and then it stops working. And they start looking at each other like, well, can we try to reboot it, try to power it on? And they're like, we can't, it won't turn back on. And then all of a sudden they turn around
and Brie
Larson's there. And the first thing she says is, where's Fury?
Yeah.
And that's the end. So I think, so to me, so at that point, like I think that's a scene that happens at some point in the film. Like we're not going to open up to Endgame and that's the scene that we get. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah,
I don't think we open up with Brie Larson already on Earth.
I don't think so either.
I think the opening will probably be more or less like the aftermath effects, and then at some point in time, we're going to hit that scene.
Yeah,
then
that
she's
very
gonna come
well
in.
could be. And then the last Easter egg is basically just Goose coughing up
The Tesseract,
and a giant hair ball,
which was cool.
which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
So oddly enough, I'm a big credits guy. I like, my wife knows that. Everybody in my family knows it. I don't leave a movie till it's over.
So the movie's actually over.
And so interestingly enough, in this movie, that's how I noticed that there was 4 cats that played Goose. I said, "Oh look," and they were all like one name names. It was really funny, all 4 different cat names. When they did like the special thanks to, basically they kind of honor like any creators, artists, or writers
They do
that
with every
they probably
film.
pulled
ideas
elements
from
of the
or-
pull.
yeah.
It's I would like to be in the room when somebody says, okay, so who are we going to put on that? And incidentally, for this movie, there was like literally 4 or 5 lines of names of comic book artists and writers. And it was just like, whoa. Like both times I've seen the movie, I couldn't read it fast enough. So at some, hopefully someday when I have this on DVD or for stream, I can just pause it and I can just, read all the names. But it had, a lot of older, because like I said, Captain Marvel has been around in comic books since the late 60s. Yeah. So it had a lot of the older the original 60s contributors, a lot of the 70s, and then, even, more modern day people. Right. Because the Captain Marvel character, there's been multiple iterations, not just original Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, Monica Rambeau. There was even like later 90s and 2000s and current, there's been a lot of different Captain Marvels. So I was actually, it was one of the longest lists of thanks that I've seen. So I was actually kind of happy about that. Good. The more names, the better, because they made sure they didn't leave anybody out.
But I think ultimately, I know I enjoyed it. Did you? You said you enjoyed it as well, right? I mean, I know we nitpick things on the video.
Yeah,
but I think overall, I think we really liked.
I enjoyed it as long as I turned my brain off for a certain amount. Not let too many things annoy me too much.
I mean, I definitely recommend seeing this film. Obviously, if you're a comic book movie fan, and if you are going to see, I think there were a lot of people who went to this film going because they wanted to see what happens before Endgame. And I think there were a lot of people that went.
To me, it is the prelude to Endgame.
Yes.
This is the movie you got to see before you go into Endgame. It's really going to lead up to it. You'll have more deeper appreciation of the Captain Marvel character.
Because I think she's going to get a big starring role in this movie.
Yeah, I do too, and I don't think they're going to do a lot to explain her. The explanation was this is the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think that makes sense. Critically, like if I had to, give you my star rating for this movie, I'll be honest with you, I have trouble giving it more than 2.5 stars, but that doesn't mean it wasn't enjoyable. I think there was too many plot holes, too many plot conveniences, not enough of strength in the characterizations and the plot line, and it didn't have a grand enough scale, and I think it just played very straightforward and safe in a lot of ways. So I gave it 2.5 stars, but I did enjoy it. I think it's going to make a lot of money.
I think it made over 150 million for the weekend, and I think
I don't know how much it's going to stay that course. I think it's going to drop off a little.
It'll probably have legs for the next couple of weeks because I don't think nothing big's coming out till Shazam.
Yeah, and I think it. I don't know that this movie is being highly critically praised. I don't know that it's being trashed. I just think it's just. I think it's just getting, kind of like, a steady stream of it's okay.
It's definitely more positive than negative. That's for sure.
Yeah, because I just felt like if they could have done a lot more and treated a lot more seriously, and I think that would have lended to a better. I think they could have made a better movie. Like
I think it might have been a little bit longer. I think they could have done like another like 10 minutes.
To use a line from the movie, one of the lines that Jan Rog says is, to make you, my goal is to make you the best version that you could be. And I don't feel that this was the best version that Captain Marvel could have been. I feel like there easily could have been better versions of this movie made either directed or scripted by whoever. I think they just took a lot of safe routes. They didn't really take any chances, and I don't think it's enough a chance to just say, well, we made a movie with a female character. Well, you already knew you were doing that. Now what are you gonna do with that? And what they did with that was not as good as they could have. Again, I think, like I said, I think Wonder Woman was a much better film. I think
Wonder Woman's a better film.
Wonder Woman is a better film.
And these two, listen, I think it's not that it's just a Marvel versus DC thing. I think there are going to be a lot of comparisons because Wonder Woman, to me, that set the bar for this generation of comic book films. And
Wonder Woman is a much more iconic character, without a doubt.
Yes.
I mean, I feel that the Wonder Woman movie, I gave that like a solid 3 stars, maybe even leaning towards 3.5.
Listen, Wonder Woman starts
really
to fall,
leaning towards 3.5.
We'll do a review on that at some point in time for sure. But like Wonder Woman does start to fall a bit, falls apart towards the end. But for the first like 3/4 of that film, that's a pretty decent film. That's a pretty solid.
Yeah,
film.
There's a couple things that I have wrong with that film, but like not nearly as
much as this one. There's definitely a lot more plot holes, I believe, in this film than in that.
I feel this is a. It could be either a 2-star movie, leaning heavily towards 2.5. But at no point did I felt like it was like where I was debating with myself, wow, is it 3 stars or is it? And I was like, no, it never even came to me like, oh, 3 stars. Never once occurred to me that. I was like, I never even have to debate it. So I was like, yep, 2.5, which isn't bad. Trust me, there's a lot worse than 2.5 stars. 2.5 out of 4 is,
But you don't have to listen to us. You can go to the movies, you can see it, and you can judge it for yourself. That's one thing I'll always say. You can watch people's videos, you can read people's reviews, but make your own decisions. You don't have to agree with what you read in there. Mm-hmm. Don't just read something like, oh, I know it's going to be crap, I'm not going to go see it. No, go see the film. Judge it for yourself.
Especially since a lot of reviews are broad spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll see some people that hate, some people that love it.
Absolutely.
I'll be honest with you. Like I said, we saw this movie Thursday night.
Yeah.
I was excited to see it again today, bringing my wife. I was like, I wasn't sitting there going like, oh, I got to bring Carmen. I don't believe I got to sit through this movie again. No, I was looking forward to sitting through it again. Knowing where it winds up, seeing those scenes in the beginning, and saying, okay, I know where these characters are going, so I want to see how they're playing their scenes now. So I definitely enjoyed seeing it again. I don't know that I'll be seeing it a third time, but if somebody drags me to see it again, I'll see it again. Especially, at this point, I would see it I would see it on IMAX maybe.
Yeah, test it out, do something different.
And I think one of the things, I think some of the most action parts of the movie, a lot of them were shown in the preview.
Yeah, I think they gave a little bit of that away.
So I think watching the preview made it look like this movie was gonna be all
a lot of action,
a lot of real all throughout, and in reality it wasn't. So
no. They broke it up through dialogue and slowed down moments to kind of get to know the characters a little bit more.
So I was like, that's why I was a little bit upset. I'm sitting there like, because it led itself up to be like this real intergalactic cosmic type battle type movie and this and that. Not that I expected it to be a roller coaster ride the whole way.
Right.
But it was like.
But I think on that note, guys, I think we're gonna wrap it up. So that's our review of Captain Marvel.
Yeah, so go see Captain Marvel.
Go see Captain Marvel. Judge it for yourself. After you see it, go into the comments, guys. So start a conversation with us. What did you think about it? What did you think on our thoughts? Agree, disagree? Share this video when you can. Hope you guys really enjoy it.
Hope you guys subscribe.
Yeah, hope you guys subscribe and follow. I'm not sure what the next film we're going to see is. I know there's a few things that are coming out in March that I'm sure we're going to go to. Mm-hmm. I know the next big film that we probably go and see is the other Captain Marvel, also known as Shazam. That comes out in April. That's probably the next big release we're going to see. But there's probably going to be at least 1 or 2 films along the way that we're going to watch. So
and we always still may just do an episode in there where we just talk about something
older. And we might even have an older film that we might start going back and watching. We might even do the state of the DC universe since Shazam takes place in that. Kind of do a little brief catch up for everybody. But I think it's going to do it for us.
Cool.
All right. So, guys, thanks again for joining us.
Yep.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Enjoy the rest of the night, guys. Thank
Good
you
night.
very much.